Hello, my name is Emily Dingle, and this is my service learning project about Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences High School Recruitment Program. Introduction. I began my project during the outbreak of COVID-19, which would have been in the spring of 2020. I had a very hard time finding a place that I could do service learning hours, specifically because I was constantly being exposed to COVID because I'm an ER nurse. I ended up choosing Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences to do my service learning project through because I had reached out to my capstone advisor and she got me in contact with Serena Chamness. She is the Education Innovation Partner of Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences, and she specifically works with high school students. She is in charge of healthcare camp, dual enrollment programs for high school students, and she helps find high school students opportunities to shadow in healthcare. This was really important to me because I attended an open house at Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences when I was in high school before I ended up choosing my career path. And although that was really helpful to make me decide that I wanted to be a nurse, I wish I had taken more advantage of shadowing the career before I started and attending things like this back then. Although it did work out because I do love being a nurse, I wish I would have taken an opportunity to understand more about the career before I dove into it. High school students are eligible in several local counties to do dual enrollment programs. Franklin, Lebanon, Lancaster, and York counties are all included in it. There's a list that we're going to see next on the next slide. Students need, and it's specific for students that need guidance on further education. A lot of students don't have opportunities and resources available to them to find on their own to decide what they want to do after high school. It also introduces them to healthcare careers, and with the dual enrollment program, they can earn college credits that are discounted through Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences that can help them to their healthcare career degree while they're in high school. This is a list of all of the participating high schools that do the dual enrollment. Some social issues regarding this population of high school students. A lot of them don't really want to think about college and they want to enjoy their high school years and not think ahead, and they just kind of want to live in the moment. They're not always searching for what the next step is and how they're going to do it. A lot of them encounter unequal opportunities in society. Gender norms, specific with nursing. Back in the day, a lot of people thought that nurses were only female, so a male student pursuing a career as a nurse might feel like they don't belong. Another social issue would be substance abuse among high school students, and that kind of stops them from furthering their career. And transportation. A lot of them want to go and further their education, but they might not always have the means of transportation to get there, and the dual enrollment is pretty flexible because you can take some of the college courses online. Associated with the high school population, specifically in those counties, is that they don't always have access to further education, and a lot of them don't have any means to fund, and this kind of goes along with the economical issues, but right now there isn't any government full funding for continuing education after high school, so a lot of this is all out-of-pocket costs, and not everyone has the money to do that. Economic issues. Like I said, low funds for tuition, but what's really cool about Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences is that the dual enrollment program for high school students for the first 7 credits, they do offer a 50% discount. They also offer payment plans for the first 7 credits, as well as if they end up taking any more than 7 credits, they can do payment plans for both of those options. And there are some scholarships specifically for high school students at Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences for these dual enrollment programs. Cultural issues. Not everyone grows up thinking that continuing education is important for them or even for them. Again, on the gender norms, healthcare was once thought to be a very feminine career specific to nursing and taking care of patients. Ethical dilemmas. The healthcare field can be an ethical dilemma altogether because not everybody agrees with all the treatments that patients undergo. And a lot of high school students look at following in their family's footsteps. So if their parents and their grandparents and their older siblings or cousins didn't go to college, they might not think that they're destined for college. Or, some of them have a family business that they think they automatically have to go into because it's being passed on down. So I created 3 PowerPoint presentations, and I did voice recordings for each presentation. I created handouts to go with each presentation. There was 2 for each. I checked in with Miss Chamness frequently to make sure that I was staying on track and following the objectives. As the high school students have viewed the Zoom presentations, I have received their copies of their completed handouts that are answering the questions. My objectives for this project was that by the end of October, I plan to teach high school students that participate in the Zoom lesson 3 effects on patients and staff when the emergency department is abused, 3 different strategies to use to recognize stroke signs and symptoms in the community, and I personally wanted to learn 2 different reasons why the students have an interest in healthcare careers and 2 things they are currently doing to prepare. So, along with the handouts that went with the presentations, I included questions based off of these objectives, and I had the students answer them about what they learned after the presentations, what they were doing to prepare, if they were preparing at all for a career in healthcare. And then from the ones that did complete the presentations and viewed them and did the handouts, so far I've gotten the handouts back that were filled out, so I got to see what their thoughts were, what they were thinking, and what they learned from the presentations. I also wanted to include different subjects rather than just healthcare careers because not every student that views the presentations are going to go into a healthcare career. So I also wanted them to be able to take away something that they can use for their future and learn something about, recognizing stroke signs and symptoms in the community, because just because you're not in healthcare doesn't mean that stroke doesn't happen in front of you or doesn't affect your life or your family or your friends or even yourself. So I wanted them to be able to use that information to continue on rather than just listening to one presentation about the careers that are available to them and how they can go into dual enrollment and all the resources with that. So, like we touched on before, the students filled out the handouts, and I got to go over them and see what they filled out. There was a series of questions that included the objectives like we talked about already, and I got to see if they actually met the objectives, and it was pretty interesting because a lot of them did when they filled out the handouts, and they were all returned to me after they completed when they did. And there's still more to come because the presentations are planned to be used for other high school students. Analyzing the service project, I introduced students to different careers that they probably wouldn't have thought of before. One of my presentations specifically was on the different types of careers within healthcare and how everybody in the healthcare field is a team, and if one part of that team isn't there, everything else crumbles. I taught students about stroke. I informed them about emergency department abuse because that's important alone to know if you should go to a family doctor or an urgent care or an emergency department. That kind of lets them realize, if they haven't ever even been to one before, if something does happen in the future, where should they seek medical attention? And it also got them a chance to jumpstart their healthcare career or just their continuing education in general. With the dual enrollment program, students can use those credits for other healthcare careers. They don't even have to use them at Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences depending on where they decide to go. They're college credits and a lot of them are transferable, so it's really interesting and neat that they get to finish these credits while they're in high school and also receive a discount. And then they even get to see maybe if this if a healthcare career is even for them. It gets them thinking. The presentation on healthcare careers dove into a lot of the uncommon or unknown careers that are within healthcare, and I included videos that they could see, like a day in the life of a CAT scan tech or an x-ray tech or a PA, which is a physician's assistant, or a nurse practitioner. And then I also included nursing because that's my career. My personal and professional reflection, I really realized that I have an impact on future generations of healthcare workers. And not that I'm not always trying to set a good example, but I realize more and more that future generations do look up to the current healthcare members, and they look at us for advice, specifically when students come to the hospital I work at to do their clinical or shadow. Like, that leaves a big impact on them and makes them decide if this is something they want to continue doing, or makes them realize, I'm really in the right career path. This is what I like doing. It gives them a good example to go by. It also made me pause and think about my own personal career and back to when I was in high school and trying to figure out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, because I'm sure for many that's kind of overwhelming, because this is something that you're planning on doing for 50 plus years and you ultimately plan to retire in, unless you decide something else. But this is a very long-term path that you're thinking about. And it made me think about how I chose nursing as a career and the steps that I personally took to continue my education after high school. Like I mentioned in another slide, I attended a Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences open house, and I got to learn about some of the different careers. Ultimately, I obviously picked nursing, but it was really interesting for me because I personally didn't even know what other careers are out in healthcare, let alone just the hospital. It really opened my eyes to realize what else I could choose. And it also I realized that I should take more of an attempt to get more involved in orienting new nurses. I've been a nurse for 5 years, and the majority of those years, 4.5 years, were spent in the emergency department, and I'm eligible to now orient. I've done it a few times, but I realized that I need to make myself more available to orient because it's something that I am passionate about, and I want to give a good impression on new nurses, specifically new grads. And I also want to sign up. At our hospital, we have a program to sign up if a high school student wants to shadow in the department. You can sign up to be the nurse that they shadow for the day. So it made me realize that professionally I need to expand what I'm doing in the department rather than just being a nurse. And I say that with a grain of salt because, just being a nurse is important, but there are things that I can do to go out of my bubble and help oncoming nurses and even high school students decide if this is something for them that they really want to do.